It was 2:34 in the morning when my phone buzzed with what looked like the easiest $68 I'd make all week. I had been driving deliveries across rural Oregon for almost 8 months, mostly to save enough money to finish college. Night shifts paid better, and after a while, you stopped noticing the empty highways and silent neighborhoods. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The order was unusually large for that time of night. 2 burgers, a family-size pepperoni pizza, 3 bottles of soda, and a chocolate cake. The address was 23 miles outside the city. Normally, I would have declined it. Drivers had a simple rule. If the payout looked too good after midnight, there was usually a reason. But my rent was due in 3 days. I accepted it. The restaurant staff looked relieved when I walked in. The cashier handed me the bags without saying much, but just before I left, he looked at the receipt and frowned. "You sure you're taking this one?" I laughed. "Why? Bad neighborhood?" He hesitated. "I've worked here 4 years, and I've seen that address maybe 5 times. Every driver who comes back says the place feels wrong." I smiled, assuming he was trying to scare me. "If I don't come back, keep my tip." He didn't laugh. The drive started normally. Streetlights, traffic, gas stations. Then, one by one, everything disappeared. The GPS guided me onto a narrow county road surrounded by thick pine trees. There wasn't another car in sight. 5 minutes later, my music stopped. No signal. No internet. Even my offline map froze for a second before correcting itself. The temperature outside suddenly dropped. My windshield began fogging from the outside, even though it hadn't rained all night. I rolled my eyes. "It's just the weather." That's what I kept repeating. Then my headlights briefly caught something standing between the trees. A person. Tall, perfectly still. I instinctively hit the brakes. By the time the car stopped, there was nothing there. I blamed exhaustion and kept driving. 10 minutes later, I reached the address. It wasn't a farmhouse. It was an enormous Victorian house, sitting alone in the middle of hundreds of acres of forest. Every downstairs light was on, but there wasn't a single car outside. Not one. The mailbox leaned sideways. Its numbers had almost faded away. As I stepped out with the food, I noticed something strange. The front door was already open, just a few inches. Nobody knocked on a stranger's open door at nearly 3 in the morning. So I called out, "Delivery!" No answer. Only silence. I knocked again. Nothing. Then I noticed an envelope lying on a small wooden table just inside the entrance. My name was written on it. Not driver, not the company. My actual name. Jake. My stomach tightened. Inside the envelope was exactly $68 in cash. Not 67, not 70. Exactly what the app had promised. I hadn't even marked the order as delivered yet. Someone already knew how much I was getting paid. I reached for my phone. The screen lit up. Order canceled. No explanation. No customer message. Just canceled. The timestamp showed it had been canceled. 23 minutes earlier. I stared at the screen. That wasn't possible. If it had been canceled 23 minutes ago, why had the GPS kept guiding me here? Why was the payment already waiting inside? Before I could think any further, a floorboard creaked somewhere upstairs. Not loudly, just enough to tell me. Someone was inside. "Hello?" Still nothing. Then another sound. Slow footsteps. 1, 2, 3. Walking across the second floor. I told myself it was the homeowner. Maybe an elderly couple. Maybe someone who couldn't hear me. I climbed the first few stairs. Halfway up, I noticed family photographs covering the wall. Every picture looked old, really old. The clothes looked like they were from the late 1980s. The strange part, every frame had the faces scratched out, every single one, as if someone had deliberately destroyed them. Another step echoed above me, this time closer. I looked toward the hallway, empty. The footsteps stopped, so did my breathing. My phone suddenly vibrated. Finally. One bar of signal. A notification appeared. Emergency alert. Severe weather warning. Stay indoors. Before I could read the rest, the signal disappeared again. At that exact moment, I heard a whisper. Not upstairs. Right behind me. So close that I actually felt warm air touch my neck. "You're late." I spun around so fast I nearly fell down the stairs. No one. The hallway behind me was completely empty. I ran downstairs. The front door slammed shut on its own. The entire house shook. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. I pulled harder. Nothing. My heart started pounding. I kicked the door, still locked. Then, my delivery bag buzzed. Inside was my customer's phone. Except, I had never picked up anyone's phone. The screen was already on. It displayed a live camera feed. Me, standing in the hallway. The angle was impossible. It looked like the camera was mounted high in the corner of the room. I slowly looked up. Nothing. No camera. No wires. No device. But on the phone? The live feed continued. Then someone walked into frame behind me. Tall, wearing dark clothes, standing completely still. I turned around immediately. There was nobody there. I looked back at the phone. The figure was gone. The lights went out. Every single one. The house became completely black. Not the kind of darkness where your eyes adjust. The kind where it feels like light itself has disappeared. Then came the footsteps again. Slow, heavy. Walking downstairs. One step at a time. Not rushing. Almost enjoying it. I switched on my flashlight. The beam barely reached the staircase. Halfway down stood a man. At least, I thought it was a man. He was impossibly tall. His face was hidden in shadow. His arms looked unnaturally long. He wasn't moving. He was simply watching me. Then, he smiled. Not with his mouth, with the reflection of his teeth catching the flashlight. I didn't wait. I smashed a nearby window with a chair and threw myself outside. Glass tore through my jacket as I landed on the wet ground. I ran without looking back. Branches cut my face. My lungs burned. I finally reached my car, locked the doors, started the engine. Nothing. The battery was dead. It had been perfectly fine less than 10 minutes earlier. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed against the driver's window. Knock. 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 I refused to look. I stared straight ahead until the engine suddenly started by itself. I slammed the accelerator. The tires spun through the mud before the car shot back onto the road. I never checked the rearview mirror. Not once. Police searched the property the following afternoon. They found the house exactly where I described it, but it had been abandoned for almost 15 years. No electricity, no furniture, no photographs, no broken window, nothing. The investigators assumed I had suffered exhaustion and hallucinations, until one officer checked my dash camera. The footage showed me parking outside the house exactly as I had described. Then it captured something that nobody could explain. As I stood at the front door holding the food, someone was already standing in the upstairs window, watching me. The camera recorded the figure clearly for almost 11 seconds. When officers entered the house the next day, there was no second floor, only an unfinished attic above the ceiling. To this day, I still deliver food. But every time an order appears with unusually high pay after midnight, I decline it. Because some addresses aren't trying to feed hungry people. They're trying to make sure someone shows up. When my wife and I bought our first house, we thought we'd found the deal of a lifetime. It was a beautiful 2-story home just outside Asheville, North Carolina. Built in the early 1970s, surrounded by tall oak trees, with a wraparound porch and a huge backyard. The only strange thing was the price. It was almost $90,000 cheaper than every other house in the neighborhood. The realtor explained that the previous owner had passed away without any family, and the property had sat empty for years. To us, it sounded like luck. Looking back, I don't think the house was ever truly empty. The first week was perfect. We painted the walls, unpacked boxes, and joked about finally escaping apartment life. Then small things started happening. Nothing terrifying, just strange. A loaf of bread disappeared from the kitchen. We assumed we'd forgotten where we put it. 2 days later, half a gallon of milk was gone. My wife blamed me. I blamed her. Neither of us thought much about it, until the eggs disappeared too. One Friday night, I woke up around 3 a.m. I could hear footsteps upstairs. Slow, careful, almost like someone was trying not to be heard. I nudged my wife awake. "Did you hear that?" She listened for a few seconds. Nothing. The footsteps had stopped. I grabbed a flashlight and searched every room. Every window was locked. Every door was still bolted. Nobody was there. I convinced myself the house was settling. Old homes make strange noises. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. A few days later, my wife called me while I was at work. She sounded terrified. "Someone opened the bathroom cabinet," I laughed. "Maybe you forgot." I didn't. When I got home, every bottle inside the cabinet had been rearranged in perfect rows. Not stolen, not broken, just organized. Neither of us had done it. We installed cameras. One covered the front door. One watched the backyard. Another pointed into the kitchen. For 3 nights, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th night, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. At exactly 2:41 a.m., the kitchen camera froze for 12 seconds. Not the other cameras, only the kitchen. Then it returned to normal. I checked the recording frame by frame, just before the video froze. The pantry door had opened by itself. When the recording resumed, it was closed again. I searched the pantry the next morning. Nothing. Until I noticed scratches on the wooden floor. They weren't random. They looked like drag marks, as if something heavy had been moved across the floor over and over again. The marks led to the back wall. I knocked on it. It sounded hollow. I borrowed a stud finder from my neighbor. Behind the pantry wall, there was empty space, a lot of it. The house blueprint didn't show any room there. I figured it was an old construction mistake. Still curious, I drilled a tiny hole through the drywall. Cold air rushed out. Then, I smelled something. Stale food. Mold. And something much worse. Like a room that hadn't been opened in years. I shined my flashlight through the hole. All I saw was darkness. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. This time, they weren't upstairs. They were inside the walls, moving slowly, from one end of the house to the other. The sound stopped directly behind our bedroom. Then, 3 quiet knocks, Knock. 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 Not on the bedroom door. Inside the wall behind our bed. Neither of us slept again. The next morning, I cut a larger hole into the pantry wall. Behind it was a narrow hidden passage, just wide enough for one person to crawl through. It stretched beneath the staircase and disappeared deeper into the house. The walls inside were covered in dust, except for one narrow trail. Someone had been using it recently. I called the police. 2 officers searched the passage with me. About 20 feet inside, they found food wrappers, empty water bottles, fresh footprints, a sleeping bag. Someone had definitely been living there. But that wasn't the worst part. The sleeping bag was still warm. Whoever had been there had left only minutes earlier. The officers searched every inch of the house. Nothing. No hidden doors. No attic access. No basement exit. It was as if the person had vanished. They told us to stay somewhere else for the night. We checked into a motel. The following afternoon, police returned with construction workers. They opened several walls throughout the house. The hidden passage connected nearly every room. There were tiny vents cut behind bedroom closets, small holes hidden inside air conditioning grills. Someone could watch almost every room without being seen. Then one officer found something taped inside the wall. Photographs, dozens of them. Pictures of us, sleeping, watching television, eating dinner, unpacking boxes. Some had clearly been taken after we'd moved in. None of us had ever seen the photographer. We never went back. The house was sold months later after major renovations. The hidden passages were sealed with concrete. Case closed. At least, that's what everyone believed. 6 months later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed my wife and me standing outside our new house. The picture had been taken from inside the upstairs window. Neither of us had ever been upstairs that day. On the back, someone had written 5 words. "The walls are thinner here." The police never identified who sent it. They searched our new house from top to bottom. They found nothing. But even now, every once in a while, usually around 3 in the morning, I wake up to the sound of slow footsteps moving somewhere beyond the bedroom wall. I never check, because sometimes not knowing is the only reason you're still alive. 3 months after I started working the night shift as a security guard, I stopped believing that every strange thing had a logical explanation. The shopping mall where I worked had been closed for nearly 4 years. A massive fire had destroyed the East Wing, and the owners had abandoned the property while the insurance case dragged on. My job was simple. Walk the building every hour, check the entrances, and watch over nearly 200 CCTV cameras from the security office. Most nights were painfully quiet. No customers, no lights, just empty stores collecting dust. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday at exactly 2:17 a.m. Camera 46, which overlooked the children's play area, briefly showed what looked like a little girl standing beside the broken carousel. She couldn't have been older than 8. Long black hair, a white hoodie, pink rain boots. She wasn't moving. I assumed someone had broken in. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and hurried to the play area. It took less than 2 minutes to get there. Nobody was inside. Every emergency exit was still locked from the inside. I checked every corner. Nothing. When I returned to the security office, I replayed the recording. The girl was gone. Not because she had walked away, she simply wasn't there anymore. The footage jumped from one frame to the next, and she had disappeared completely. I blamed a camera glitch. Old systems fail all the time. The next night, she appeared again. Same camera, same time, 2:17 a.m. This time, she was standing closer to the camera, still perfectly still. I immediately ran back to the play area. Again. Nobody. I even checked the ceiling panels and storage rooms. Nothing. By Friday, I had stopped telling myself it was a malfunction, because she wasn't just appearing. She was moving. Not while the camera was recording. Between nights. Every night she was a few feet closer than before. Saturday, she stood beside the carousel. Sunday, she stood halfway across the room. Monday, she was only 10 feet from the camera. That's when I made a decision I still regret. I stayed in the security room instead of running downstairs. I wanted to watch what happened if she reached the camera. At exactly 2:17, she appeared. This time, she slowly raised her head. My heart nearly stopped. Until then, she had always been looking at the floor. Now, she was staring directly into the lens. She smiled. Then the screen went black. Every monitor in the security room lost signal at the same time. The lights flickered once, twice. Then the backup generator activated. When the cameras came back online, camera 46 was empty. But camera 12 suddenly displayed someone standing outside the security office door. A little girl. White hoodie. Pink boots. She was impossible. The security office was on the opposite side of the mall. There was no way she could have reached it in less than 5 seconds. I rushed to the door and pulled it open. The hallway was empty. I checked camera 12 again. Nobody. Then my radio crackled. A voice whispered, "Don't look behind you." It wasn't dispatch. It wasn't another guard. It sounded like a child. I froze. Slowly, I turned around. Nothing. I laughed nervously and convinced myself someone was playing a prank. Then camera 46 came back online by itself. The girl was there again. Except, she wasn't alone anymore. Behind her stood a tall man in a security uniform. He looked almost exactly like me. Same height, same flashlight, same jacket. The only difference, his face was completely black. No eyes, no mouth, just darkness. The child pointed directly toward the camera. The shadow guard slowly turned his head toward me. Even though it was only a recording, the monitor suddenly filled with static. Every speaker in the room emitted a high-pitched screech. Then silence, complete silence. Even the air conditioner stopped. That's when I heard footsteps outside my office. Heavy, slow, exactly matching the footsteps of someone wearing my work boots. I looked through the small glass window in the door. Someone was standing just outside, perfectly still. I couldn't see their face because the hallway lights had gone out, but I could clearly see the security badge clipped to their chest. It had my employee number on it. The doorknob slowly began to turn. I backed away. The office door was locked, yet the handle kept moving. Once, twice. Then it stopped. My phone buzzed. A notification from the CCTV system. Motion detected inside security office. Inside, not outside. I looked back toward the monitors. One of the cameras was showing the room I was standing in. The angle was from the ceiling corner. I watched myself staring at the screen. And behind me, someone was standing less than 3 feet away. I spun around. Nothing. I looked back at the monitor. The figure was still there. It leaned closer, its head tilted unnaturally. Then every monitor shut off. When the lights returned a few seconds later, the office door was wide open. No one was outside. No one was inside. The next morning, I reported everything. Management laughed. They assumed stress and sleep deprivation had gotten to me, until the IT department reviewed the server logs. At exactly 2:17 every night, camera 46 had recorded exactly 1 minute of footage. The strange part wasn't the girl, it was the timestamp. According to the server, those recordings had been created 6 years before the mall fire, long before I had ever worked there, long before those cameras had even been installed. I quit that same week. A month later, another guard replaced me. 2 weeks into his job, he disappeared during a routine patrol. The only thing investigators recovered was the final CCTV recording. It showed him walking through the empty mall at 2:17 a.m. He suddenly stopped, looked directly into a camera, raised his flashlight towards someone standing just outside the frame. Then he calmly walked off screen. No other camera ever captured him again. To this day, that footage remains locked in the police evidence archive, and according to the detective who watched it, the camera never lied.